Good evening. It's 8 o'clock, and if everything's working, we should be live. And although I can't see you, I hope you can see me. I'm a little bit more confident than last week. I've seen there was a lot of people watching, and we were all very touched by the support we've received, by the number of people who sent messages of support and who loved the film The Little Girl Who Sold the Sun, and who also made donations, all of which is very useful because the studio is closed. Our cash flow position is bad, and all the money that we receive is actually being used straight away. It's actually needed. So thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for all the extraordinary response for our streaming of the Gospel according to St. Matthew, the Pasolini film, which both of those films, incidentally, you can still watch them if you go on our website. As you know, it's not just the museums, the theatres, the cinema that are closed, but also the churches and all places of worship are closed. And I felt that the Gospel according to St. Matthew on the Easter weekend was needed more than just enjoyed. And indeed, I've had lots and lots of messages of people who were very pleased and grateful to have had the opportunity to either discover or re-experience this wonderful masterpiece. And if you haven't seen it, I do strongly recommend you watch it. So as I said, this is the fourth week of the lockdown, and the fight against the disease has encouraged many people to use a warlike vocabulary. There's a lot of things about enemy and fight and so on and so forth. And there is sometimes even a nostalgia about the wartime Britain and the spirit of resistance that existed then. And the film I'm going to show you tonight is actually a film made in 1943, therefore a war film. But I'd like myself to stress that we should not make a comparison between the disease and war. War is a man-made disaster. It only exists because we're willing to do it. We can stop it. It's only happening by agreement. There is a very big difference. The only thing that is in similar is obviously the fact that solidarity and the language of solidarity in both cases is needed for people to cope with it. But the thing itself is not like war. So the film we're going to see is 1943, is called Battle for Music. It's the story of the survival of the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And in 1939, the orchestra was deemed to be bankrupt. The building up to the war had meant that the investors had pulled out little by little, and but the players decided to continue. They were not willing to give up, and they organized themselves as a self-organized organization, as a kind of co-op, and they decided to continue as an orchestra. Ironically, like now, the government closed all the theaters and all the venues exactly at that moment, and the film describes the continuation of the orchestra throughout the war years, when they continue regardless, and they decide obviously to start touring, and they actually they created the London Philharmonic in the way we know it and respect it now, through their determination to keep the orchestra going. And I think because the film shows this idea is done. So the players in the film, the actors, are non-professional actors. They are the musician of the orchestra themselves, reenacting their own thing. So the film is quite wonderful and fascinating in the sense that they're not really very good actors, but they are acting themselves. So they are representing, they're doing their own life, but they're not acting it the way we would maybe like thespian actors to deliver it. And the other thing that they do, of course, is that they play a great number of pieces of music, which they play beautifully, and is beautifully photographed. And the whole thing is an extraordinary document about the history of the Philharmonic. And I think, if nothing else, it shows that whatever happens, we must continue, and that is really the subject of that film. One thing I have to say about the screening tonight is that technically I don't actually have, as I speak, the right to show this film. I've asked, it's a film which is held by the National Film Archives at the British Film Institute, and I've asked permission to stream it tonight. They've responded, but they haven't actually officially given me the permission. I assume they'll say yes, because they're not there to extract money out of those things. They're preserving and looking after the film heritage of the nation. And of course, there's no point looking after those films unless people like you, albeit it's an empty theatre, can actually see those films. So I'm taking a little bit of a chance of preempting their positive answer. One thing I would like to add about this is that the work of the BFI and the work of the National Film Archive is wonderful, and they do have a very remarkable website where you can explore and see many, many films which they've restored and made available online. And both for research and for just enjoyment, this resource is well worth visiting. And although they haven't given me the permission to show the film, I thought I'd give them a plug about their library, their online library, which is well worth it. The other thing about question of having the permission to do what I'm doing right now or not, I was thinking that the players of the London Philharmonic in 1939 didn't ask permission about continuing the life of their orchestra. They just took the situation in hands and did it. And I thought, well, we are in a situation which is far from usual. I'm showing a film to an empty theatre. I'm doing all sorts of things which I wouldn't do, and not just me, but a lot of people wouldn't do normally. And I think that under the circumstances, it's not a question of permission, it's a question of whether what is right and what is wrong. And I think it's right to show you this film tonight. So I hope you enjoy it, and I will come back at the end of the screening. Thank you.
Bell? Oh, no, we're just off to the 400.
Oh, well, we're getting off the floor.
Yes,
well, let's make it a party then, shall we?
Went very well, don't you think?
I can't think, except about my holiday.
And other places of entertainment are to be closed immediately until further notice. In the light of experience, it may be possible to allow the reopening of such places in some areas. Sports gatherings and all gatherings for the purpose of entertainment and amusement, whether outdoor or indoor, which involve large numbers congregating together, are prohibited until further notice.
Oh, what's the use, Francis? I might never play the thing again.
You're right. There's no hope for the orchestra. The backers have all definitely packed up. Have you had your notice of the creditors' meeting?
So it is going into liquidation?
Yes, and us with it. And the meeting's tomorrow.
It's rotten to go down the drain, just like this, when we're all together.
But without money, what's to prevent it, Charles?
As individuals, we're worth nothing. Together, as an orchestra, the finest orchestra in the country, we are needed. If only we could give the people the chance to hear us.
How does that strike you, Charles?
Yes, that's all right.
It's how it strikes them that matters.
We're broke anyway. If we stick together, I'm sure we can save the LPO. Can you get that done by the morning, Daphne?
The directors of the company herewith declare itself to be in a state of liquidation, and that it therefore apply forthwith to the King's Bench Division in the High Court of Justice for the appointment of an official receiver who shall be empowered to take over the management of the company and any assets it may possess. Well, under the circumstances, we can take this as being substantially more or less correct. Showed a nominal deficit of £52, 17 shillings and threepence.
Here, here.
The total creditors' claims amount to the sum of £960, 12 shillings, against which there are said to be various assets of the company to the approximate value of £1,000. You will now hear a statement from the creditors.
Just a minute, please. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I won't keep you a minute. Oh, it's no use reading what we've prepared. What I think we all ought to remember is that this orchestra is one of the country's finest assets. And if it breaks up and disperses now, then to my mind, orchestral music is finished in this country. And it can't just happen like this.
Well, what's the suggestion? When do we get paid?
Well, all we want is the chance to continue as an orchestra.
But how?
If you went broke once, what's to stop you doing it again? No, it's good money after bad. I can't advise that.
Well, go on, man. Tell us how you're going to get going.
Good enough. Let's kill two birds with one stone. Gentlemen, half our trouble has been rich enthusiasts who are unreliable anyway. Their love of good music is like their love of caviar. It looks good, and it looks good to be seen eating it. After all, we're the orchestra and must stand on our own feet. But we have to find new audiences. And I believe they are the people of this country. They can't come to us, so we must go to them.
Who's going to pay the fares?
I suggest we elect a committee to run our own orchestra our own way. Then we can share and share alike, good or bad.
Oh, yeah.
Ben just telephoned.
Yeah, so the company isn't wound up. What are they going to do?
Well, they're trying to run it on their own. They've formed a committee of the players.
Have they got any money? Get Mr. Wheeler for me, will you? Tell Ben I want to see him when he comes in, will you?
Yes, Mr. Clifton.
Well, Mr. Wheeler, you've heard about the LPO.
Who hasn't? But why should I? Oh, I see. Yes, I should be most interested. How much is it going to cost me?
Oh, about 40,000 a year less takings, and they won't be much till things get better. Yes, but think of the prestige it'd make you. Oh, sure. I know you're a very fine conductor, better than Bolt or Sargent, but still you've got to prove yourself, and you've got the money, and I can help you. Ah, yes, but remember, there are a lot of others. All right, then, but the time is not ripe yet. No, they'll never get along without money these days. All right, I'll come round and see you, with a contract.
I think the old company's lawyer would help us.
Let's hope so. It's no good fiddling about.
What it boils down to is that we must have a company of our own.
Absolutely. Without that, we're easy meat for every shark in the country.
And no more agents either. We'll do our own booking from now on.
Then we'll have to be the directors of the company, I suppose.
In that case, won't the creditors come down on us?
No, of course not. Or will they? Do you know we should have to get a book on company law or something?
As you suggested a company, Tom, you should be our first secretary. What do you say?
Good idea.
That serves you right.
Well, we've got an orchestra, a company, and a secretary. What about some work?
Yes, work.
I'm afraid that's the hardest thing of the lot. Don't forget the old company didn't go bust without trying.
Yes, but the difference is that it's our work for our existence. If it's there, we'll get it.
The first job is to find our audiences.
We will. Do you think you could find the solicitor now, Tom?
I'll go and see. Hello, Daphne. I'm the new company secretary. Would you like to be the secretary's secretary and work for us?
I'd love it.
Of course, we shan't be able to pay you. Yet. But we shall later.
I'll take a chance.
Good for you, Daphne. Goodbye, Tom.
Wasn't there a suggestion to do a short tour? Beginning at Cardiff, I think it was.
Yes, and Southampton afterwards. Couldn't we get it fixed at a cinema again? You know, popular prices.
It's a lead, anyway.
Good afternoon, Mr. Father.
Oh, good afternoon, Russell.
I'm sorry we bothered you.
Oh, not at all. Won't you take a seat?
Thanks.
Now, what can I do for you?
Well, it's about the company. We shall need a new one after yesterday.
Yes, quite so. Then, whom do you suggest as directors?
Well, we thought that...
Now, let me see. What about Lord Hapsley?
No.
Well, then, I could get, perhaps, Lady Fitzpatrick. Oh, yes, of course. Colonel the Honourable Binkton Weston. Did wonderfully well in the Boer War, you know.
Yes, but he's hardly a musician.
Then, whom do you suggest? I'll try what I can, but don't fly too high.
Well, we wanted the first horn, Gregory.
The first horn? Oh, to have someone who knows a bit about music, eh? But who else?
Well, we were thinking 4 other members of the orchestra.
What? All you chaps? No background at all?
What do you mean, no background? We've studied music all our lives. Isn't that enough?
Oh, well, yes, quite. But I don't know what they'll have to say.
There's nothing to say. We've decided.
Well, then you'd better form your own company. You obviously don't need my help.
Oh, but we do, Mr. Father. Thank you so much for offering. I'll tell the others you're forming the new company for us. And I'm sure one of these days you'll be very glad you've acted for the new LPO.
Hey, young man, not so fast. Who's going to pay for all this?
All charges the new company when you formed it.
Two telegrams for you, Mr. Clifton.
Oh, thanks. Morning, Ben.
Did you get my message?
Yes. I've got a job for you. Keep behind the LPO. You know all the musicians well enough to get the load on. I think they're going to feel a draft one of these days.
So you're going to help them then?
Yes, I'm going to help them.
I think that's all as far as the company is concerned. It's formed and it's ours, with the present committee as directors. And now about work.
What's that?
Well, giving concerts in London is hopeless. Everyone's left, so we've been trying to revive that short tour that was arranged in the good old days. I think we can go to Cardiff, and then on to Swansea, Cheltenham, Southampton. We should know all about that tomorrow.
I hope it does come off, Tom. We're not impatient, but we haven't earned a cent for months. And we can't live on air, at least I can't. We know you members of the committee can't work miracles, and we'll stick to the bitter end. But it's a wise man who knows when it is the end.
Well, we can give it another day. I've managed to fix Cardiff, Swansea, Cheltenham, Southampton. We ought to be all right now, you know.
Thank heavens, Tom, you were able to arrange that tour. The orchestra had been marvellous the way they stuck together, but it was getting very near the end.
We didn't have any luck with the money. Do you think we need all that?
Well, there's 70 of us, you know. And the single fare to Cardiff is over £1. Then we've got to rehearse for at least one day. I'd say 2, really, after all this time out. Then the printing, conductors and so on. We can't possibly do it under 150.
How much did we raise from the orchestra?
£32.
I could raise £10 to £15 on my policy, if I could get it out of the house without my wife spotting me.
And I could raise a bit on that old horn of mine. You know, Francis, that one I picked up at Bristol.
What, that thing? 50 bob.
Well, call it 20 now. That's 50. We still need another 100. Miss, can we have tea for 4, please?
Yes, sir.
Or say it's 90. My father-in-law's good for £10. What are you doing? It's Ben, Bernard's clerk. Perhaps he could help us.
What a hope.
I don't know. Bernie did a lot of concerts for us. He's not so bad.
All right, then.
Nothing to lose.
Ben.
Well, how goes it? Fine. We've just fixed up a nice little tour in the West Country.
So I hear. But how are you going to make it without your expenses? The boys tell me it's been pretty tough going.
Oh, it has.
We thought perhaps Bernie might like to help us.
For profit, of course.
Frankly, he couldn't find the money. Been badly hit lately. Tell you what, though. What about Wheeler? He's rolling in it. He's a decent chap, too.
Do you want to conduct?
Oh, no one could stop you boys playing.
You don't know Wheeler. Still.
Well, what must be?
Where do you find him?
The Dorchester.
The Dorchester?
Yes.
Mr. Wheeler? Clifton here. Well, it's all up to you now. Russell and the others are on their way over to see you. What? Gosh, they must have flown.
Yes. Well, all right. Well, I'll ring you back later. Right, goodbye. As I was saying before the interruption, you must appreciate that I can't just lend you the money.
Why not?
Well, because it wouldn't help you. But it would. After all, we know what we're doing. Well, with all due respect, do you? Have any of you ever run a big business before? That's what running the LPO means, you know. How about you, Mr. Gregory?
No, but we can learn.
Well, is that a musician's job? You may be an excellent horn player, Mr. Gregory, and you, Mr. Russell, may play the viola very well, but no one's going to trust you with the responsibility of money. As a matter of fact, I would go further than that. I would ask you if you think you're justified in risking the break-up of the orchestra by trying to run it yourselves without proper backing. And if the orchestra ceases to exist, you've not only failed in your selfless and praiseworthy efforts to help music, but you've irrevocably harmed the cause for which all of us have spent our lives in furthering.
Well, what is your proposition, Mr. Wheeler?
Well, I don't want to dictate to you, of course, but I should require complete control of the artistic direction of the orchestra, with your help, naturally.
Then the committee would continue.
Of course. I think it would be excellent for ensuring liaison between the rank and file and myself. But you'll agree that an orchestra must be under the control of one person, otherwise it can't reflect the feelings of a conductor.
Meaning yourself?
Yes. Others, of course, from time to time. But the essential point is that I am prepared to take over and guarantee the continuance of the orchestra. Regular salaries, contract with each member, and so on. Surely that is the most important thing.
I don't think so now. I did before, but we were wrong. It was because we had no say in our work, and because we were content just to collect our salaries, as long as there were backers willing to pay them, that we're in our present position.
Mr. Wheeler, we learnt that by hard experience, and we are never again going to lose control of our orchestra.
Sorry, gentlemen, we can't see eye to eye.
Yes, Mr. Wheeler. It's a pity we've wasted your time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, and thank you.
What a nerve.
Easy to see what he was after.
Artistic director. What a hope he's got.
Conduct? He couldn't even conduct a bus.
Well, come on, Charles, let's get busy again.
Oh, money again. Always money.
But you will, won't you?
No.
Yes.
No!
But you must. I still don't know how we made it. Anyway, here we are, off on our first date. Cigarette, Daphne? No? Charles?
Thanks, Tom.
Now, have one of mine.
Look, David, the London Philharmonic. There's a grand orchestra. Remember, we had them on the wireless. I love the Romeo and Juliet. Don't you?
Would you like to go in, Gwyneth?
Oh, yes, please.
Well, Guy, I know it sounds like what did I tell you, but there's the answer in the front of the house.
Did you ever see such wonderful business?
Aye, the numbers of times I've tried to tell managers the public will take something else as well as reviews and pictures, but the managers don't seem to think that ordinary people understand symphony concerts.
Not a bad house.
Hello, Tom. How did we do tonight?
I don't know exactly, John. I think about 250. For the time the fares are paid, it'll be 30 bob a man.
30 shillings. And the hotel's to be paid out of that? Still, it's not bad for a start. Well, on to Swansea.
It's all very well. I know they liked us, but if only...
They loved us. I think what we can do with more and more bookings like that.
That's just the trouble. It's not later on I'm worried about, but now. We took as much as we could, but with expenses, bills, and weeks of no work, how much do you think I'll have for my wife? Precious little.
The whole trouble is we don't get continuous work.
I think it's because we haven't got some big name conducting or sponsoring us.
No, it's not, Frank. That's just what we want to avoid. It's because London's empty of our old audiences. In fact, what we said long ago still holds good. We must get to the people.
They liked us on tour, all right. I wonder if we could get on the halls.
I could show them the figures we did in Cardiff and elsewhere, but they're so wedded to their variety that they're scared stiff of a symphony orchestra. Too highbrow for their audiences, so they say.
Why is it that everyone thinks the people don't want what's good? A symphony orchestra is completely unknown to the theatre public. What we want is more publicity.
What about approaching the French government? We could organize a festival of French music.
That's an idea. A series of patriotic concerts. You could nip over, Tom, and fix it up with Corto.
Why not? You speak French.
Yes, but not well enough to get a ticket for nothing.
Money again. It's always the same trouble. I wonder how we can fix it up this time.
A ticket? To France?
Break now for 10 minutes, and then we'll finish our rehearsal for the French concert.
It looks pretty bad in France now. I do hope they hold out.
Well, it's just about the end if they don't.
We won't be able to hear ourselves play for the noise of bombs pretty soon. We were fools to try and carry on in wartime.
That's plain defeatism. Why, it's people who lose their faith in their work and what they're living and fighting for who really lose this war for us.
I'm not losing my faith in anything, but there are more important things to do at the present time than play music. Beat Jerry first, and then listen to music.
Yes, but how many years does it take to create an orchestra like this? 8, 10, 15. It's more than just a collection of individual musicians who may or may not be better employed in the army. It's something irreplaceable that belongs to the nation.
Yes, and you might just as well do without books or schools. I never looked at it like that, but it's only that I feel I should do something to help.
Yeah, I know how you feel.
What about that job you were offered at Bristol, Mac?
Oh, I've lost it, Johnny, so I'll have to look for something else. I can't go on like this any longer.
A further illustration of how the British are fighting, or so they say, for world culture, is that the London Philharmonic Orchestra is now bankrupt and disbanded, having had to rely on the financiers and rich supporters who have fled to the security of their private air raid shelters in the country. This national orchestra no longer exists. What a different state of affairs in Germany, where the arts and culture are supported by the nation. It would seem inconceivable that a sick man in England has to rely on charitably supported hospitals which are forced publicly to beg for funds to cure him. But if that is true then, of course, why bother with music or any of the finer things of life? In this connection, if British listeners want to hear some real music, then tune in to the 48-meter band when the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, that masterpiece of orchestral perfection maintained by the Third Reich, will entertain you. Thank you for listening. Turn that wireless off.
I don't think I'll need that job after all, Johnny. Oh, here's Tom.
Wonder if Tom's got any good news.
Well, I'm back again, gentlemen. I left Paris yesterday just ahead of the Nazis. I spent one night in an air raid shelter with Corto. It looks to me as if France won't last out much longer. I know what a rotten time you've had, what a rotten time we've all had, waiting every day for engagements, trusting in our promises that work was just round the corner. But I know it is, if we can only hold on a little longer.
We aren't so scared of bad news. Are the French concerts cancelled?
Yes, they are cancelled. We can't very well give a concert for an ally that soon won't exist.
Where are we going from here?
Brighton. Just give the committee one more chance. After the Brighton concerts, I feel that something good will come our way. We can only try our best and all stick together.
Well, that's Brighton, that was.
He had to choose the night of our first concert to make his first raid on Brighton.
Yes, and he made a bigger impression than we did.
And got a lot more people to listen to him.
Well, what do we do now?
I don't know. Any idea?
We haven't any ideas, Tom. What about trying some of the people who have?
Who?
Oh, you know, business people, organisers, writers, anyone who's interested in the orchestra.
Well, as a matter of fact, I did hear that Priestley was asking about it.
Priestley?
Yes. I might try to get hold of him. So that just when the boys are getting over one set of cancellations, we go to Brighton for 3 days. And Brighton has its first air raid. And now, Mr. Priestley, unless you can think of some way of pulling us out, it looks to me as if we're sunk.
No, no, no. You're not going to sink. Now's the time we need good music more than ever before, and we simply can't afford to let this orchestra go. Why? It might take years and years to create another permanent orchestra.
It would take years and years. Let's see if it could be done at all. But what do you suggest?
Several things. First, I'll go round and talk to the sort of people who'd be interested. Then I'll write an article appealing for funds. That might go into the New Statesman. And then we ought to have a direct appeal with the orchestra there. We'll give a special concert.
I don't think there's time now.
Why not? Book the Queen's Hall for one night next week.
But the Queen's Hall people will tell you it takes at least 3 weeks to arrange a concert.
Well, we'll show them that they're wrong. And don't worry about the risk of its not paying. I'll look after that. As a matter of fact, I know it will pay.
Well, we might get the well-to-do musical gang to come, and you could pull subscriptions out of their pockets. And my word, the publicity wouldn't half be useful to us.
Of course it would. And then you could go and play to the people. Have a drink.
Thanks, I think I'd better. It's a bit much expecting me to arrange a concert in a week.
All right, we won't call it a concert. It isn't a concert. It's a musical manifesto.
That's an idea. There's something in that.
Of course there is. You wait. Well, here's to the London Philharmonic and our musical manifesto.
Well, here's to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think there's any need for me to introduce Mr. J.B. Priestley, who is very kindly coming to say a few words to us now. Mr. Priestley.
Ladies and gentlemen, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, one of the great orchestras of the world, is now in grave danger of being disbanded. It's London's only real permanent orchestra. That is the only single team of picked players who have been trained to work together and are pledged to work together. It's also the only symphonic orchestra that I know that is entirely self-governing, a democratic institution. It's an essential part of our national culture, of what we're fighting to preserve. True, the government doesn't seem to recognize the existence of this great orchestra, but then there are many excellent things that the government doesn't seem to recognize. Of course, they have removed and sandbagged many of our art treasures, but we don't want the London Philharmonic to be removed and sandbagged. We want it to be playing here regularly. And if we want that, it's no use our saying somebody must do something about it. There's much too much talk already about somebody doing something about something. This is one job that we must do ourselves. You and I must save this orchestra, and we must start doing it tonight. And that's why you'll find those slips in your programs. They're there for you to fill up. There'll be dark days and dangerous nights ahead of us. Soon we may be fighting for our lives. And that's all the more reason why we should have all the courage and inspiration, the noble refreshment of the spirit that music can give us, and in short, why we must save the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And now, to show you what I really meant, to say it all better than I can, Sir Adrian Boult will conduct Elgar's Cockaigne Overture.
Hello? Like a flood. It's over the 2,000 mark already, and there's still more letters to open.
Mr. Russell, here's a real contribution.
Hold on a minute, please, Sibelius. I say, there's one here for £1,000. The man who sent it doesn't want his name published. He's a Scotsman, too.
Oh, that's an improvement on 10 shillings a man.
Yes, very good.
There's no doubt things are better since Priestley made that appeal.
Oh, that confounded phone again.
Yes? No.
All right, I'll take it.
No.
Hello. Oh, yes, this is Tom Russell speaking. Well, of course I'm interested. But who's behind it all? I see. You'll tell me all about it when I see you. Good. Right, I'll come straight away. Goodbye.
Mr. Russell.
Yes.
Do come in, will you? Will you sit down?
Thanks.
Now, my name is Brian Mickey. And I expect you wonder why I've asked you to come round, do you, Mr. Russell?
As a matter of fact, I did.
Well, now, it's about the LPO. And matter of fact, a friend of mine's asked me to get in touch with you. He's read about the Priestley Manifesto. Now, he's a music lover himself, and he thinks it's a great pity your orchestra has to be disbanded.
It certainly is difficult to find the money to keep us together. But I'm very surprised that anyone should be interested in wartime. Do I know him?
Well, I think you heard his name.
I should like to meet him.
Well, I'll arrange that, but as a matter of fact, it's somebody who doesn't want his name mentioned until he knows that you are seriously interested. Now, I take it that you are interested?
Yes. I'll tell you better when I hear his proposition.
Well, now I'll introduce him to you. Will you excuse me a moment, Mr. Russell?
Certainly. Mr. Hilton, this is a surprise.
I expect it is. Sorry to bring you here this way, but I wanted to speak to you personally. Otherwise, you might have thought it a joke for me to be interested in serious music. Don't get alarmed. I don't want to conduct the band.
Oh, we mustn't worry about that.
Well, I find there are very large audiences for all kinds of music. But I think at the present time there are more people wanting to hear classical music than at any time before.
We've always thought that. Our ambition is to play to a much wider public. But there are very few halls in provincial towns which are large enough to cover the expenses of an orchestra of our size.
You mean concert halls?
Yes.
Well, why not let the variety public listen to the orchestra? They'll do it if we put it within their reach.
I agree with you.
Very well, I'll put you on the music halls. I'll cover the musicians' salaries and pay all the expenses of the tour. It'll at least prevent the orchestra from disbanding.
Providing the musicians agree, we can do something together. I shall certainly recommend it.
Good. I feel sure we'll have a very big success.
Gentlemen, I've just received the greatest piece of news we've had for a long time. Jack Hilton is to engage the orchestra for a series of concerts in music halls up and down the country. At last, we've got the chance we've been waiting for so long, to play to the people. That's a fine idea. After all, the children of today are our audiences of tomorrow.
Of course. Now, the police won't allow children's concerts in London. They want all children out of London, quite rightly. But let's go to the provinces. Now, you're in Birmingham with the orchestra next week. Let me come there and give a children's concert.
That's just what I've been thinking. The sort of concert we used to give at Westminster before the war.
Exactly. I've always maintained that children will absorb good music as easily as they'll absorb a good book.
It's true. But if you wait until you're 25 before you start reading, you can hardly expect to appreciate great literature.
Catch 'em young. I always say that music with children is like the measles. They'll catch it easily enough so long as they're placed in contact with someone who's got the disease badly. And for my part, as you know, I have a bee in my bonnet on the subject.
Oh, well, I've been stung by the same bee.
Grand. Well, now then, we'll meet in Birmingham next week.
Right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Boys and girls, it is interesting to realize that here is England in the midst of a war, and yet in this hall are some 2,000 of you children listening happily to an orchestral concert. You know, too many people have said that England is not a musical nation. Now, this war has proved, as I've always maintained, that we English do love music. Why, here are we, the London Philharmonic Orchestra and I, touring up and down the country from town to town, giving concerts almost every night, and hundreds, thousands of war workers and members of the forces have found in music the best recreation for their tired mind and bodies. Well, you've just been listening to the great music of Beethoven, the Overture to Leonora, probably the most complete expression in music of heroism. But now let's turn to something more light-hearted, the work of a fellow countryman. I want you to hear a dance tune from an opera written by Frederick Delius. The plot of the opera takes place in Florida on an orange plantation. And you are to imagine, in the cool of the evening, the workers collected together to dance, a traditional dance, to this entrancing music. We'll play to you La Calinda by Delius. Ladies and gentlemen, as you may have noticed, there's an air raid going on. Unfortunately, the management have just informed me that a building nearby is on fire. It's well under control, and I expect we should only be a nuisance in the streets. You know, it's just struck me that Hitler may blow this hall sky high, you, me, everybody, but there's one thing here he cannot touch. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. This music will live long after Hitler and the Nazi regime is completely forgotten. So I think perhaps there's nothing better we can do than to continue to play it. Nothing better you can do than to remain and hear it.
Well, of course, there was a bit of hope and glory at the end, as you would expect, as it was a 1943 film, and people were at war at that time. So this, at the end, is totally more than understandable. The film, as I mentioned, was restored by the National Film Archives. It has different versions and different things, because obviously it wasn't a massively commercial film distributed in all the theatres and so on and so forth. So there are different versions, and there is one version which is partly cut there, where at the end of the film, the London Philharmonic gets their home in North London, and on the eve of the first concert there, the Queen Hall got bombed, and all their instruments and all the instruments got destroyed, burnt to the ground. And they nevertheless delivered their inaugural concert on the next evening. They must have run around London. I mean, the film doesn't say, but they must have run around London looking for a harp, for a viola, for this, for that. I mean, extraordinary endeavor to reconstruct all the instruments. I mean, reassemble the instrument for a whole orchestra in a day. But it's very much part of the spirit of we must continue, we must deliver, and we must not let music die, whatever happens, even if people drop bombs. Again, thank you very much for joining us on this screening tonight. If you can, please donate. It does help us. So thank you very much, and see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.